Hello, my name is Lewis Driver, and I will be doing an overview of a web application I have developed. So the problem that I'm trying to solve is that lots of social media platforms like Facebook and Instagram and TikTok are devoted to keeping users engaged through whatever means possible. And one of the main things that leads to this is negative comments. Because basically when you leave a negative comment, you want to respond to it to justify your point of view, or if you are shown controversial content, it makes you outraged and you want to respond to it. However, like civil discussion isn't generally promoted for these things. So I wanted to create a social platform that requires users to create long-form written content that is reviewed by community members before it's published for the general public to see. So like the community will essentially act as a moderation system to prevent this negative content from ever being published for the general public. And my user group for this is basically anybody who wants to learn about topics from like generally reputable sources, or share what they found in their experience and what they've learned. So like bloggers, generally, that's what the point of a blog is people write down their thoughts and then something that they've learned, and then how people can learn from their experience. And then we have systems like this already that exist in the academic sphere. So when you write a research paper or you do research, it's submitted for peer review before it gets to be published and accepted by the scientific community as a whole. So my platform is kind of designed to mimic this community approval in the science community, but for the everyday individual on the platform. So in my market research, I found that like there are a lot of bloggers out there and a lot of people who read blogs. So like 21 billion blog pages are read per month. So the user base for people who want to read this content is out there, and they obviously read this, but this is putting my own different spin on it, because as I read blogs like Medium and stuff, so generally a lot of these are reputable, but many times there's no checks or balances to who can publish what and what they're publishing, and if they're citing sources or whatnot. So you can see like all these comments. This is about Jeff Bezos, so he's a billionaire and he's controversial in some rights for that. So we see this commentary that Medium has in their comments that they just said random things about it that's not really contributing so much to the general community to learn. So I also have this. So we have like articles published in scientific and technical journals. These are the numbers per million people. So in the US, we've got 1,357 articles per million people. So if you multiply that by 350 million, that's a lot of people, or that's a lot of articles for people to read and people to learn about, because it's scientific. So people are doing these things and they want to share this information, but I just want to improve the environment that it's in. So here we have the login page if you don't have an account. So we're just going to do an example where we filled out the form wrong, because like your first name shouldn't be one letter long. So you're going to get these error message because your name wasn't long enough, and then the password I had was not sufficient, so we couldn't submit the user. But we already have an account, so we're going to sign in here, and we're going to use the architect's account. So we'll sign in, we get a little loading state so that the user knows that they're being signed in, but they just have to wait a little bit. And here we have the general pool of knowledge. So like the concept and branding of KnowledgePool is that everything we learned is put into this pool of knowledge, and each individual can contribute a drop of knowledge to the overall pool. So here we can see that one of these posts is by the architect, and you could go through and you could read these. So I have it so that currently I can parse and display dynamically generated content. So this content is represented by an H2 and a paragraph tag, and then an H2 and then an ordered list with list items. But with the current submission system, because I didn't have time to develop that dynamic form, because like adding fields to a form dynamically is a little more complex. Currently, the layout for the post is just, you have the content, and then you have the resources, and then like the summary and the title. So we can see that the architect wrote this post. So we would go to My Drops, and we can see all the posts written by this account. And the only post that has been approved is this identifying and cooking puffball mushrooms post. So we see currently the threshold for something to be shown in the pool is that it has 2 approval ratings, or 2 ratings of approved. And I just had to force approve these for the demonstration purpose because I don't have users to actually interact with this. So if it was rejected, for example, you could take this feedback and you would rewrite your article or your post, your drop of knowledge, and you would resubmit it. But this is the filtration system here. That's actually so you can see that the title 1 is a post that was submitted, but it doesn't exist in the pool. Only that one does. And then, so we want to create a drop. And this is where we have prompts for the user to understand that, hey, we want you to share something that you're learning, or like you want to teach something about something. It's not just willy-nilly, I'm angry about what happened at Thanksgiving or something. Unless you want to really flesh out the topic and explore that and like talk about more in-depth stuff. But we recognize that you're gonna have your post be reviewed by your peers before it's published for anybody to see, and then that it's okay that it's not approved the first time because you want to improve your content. So it's like an iterative process. So if we go here and we put this as a title, and then here you get prompts in these text fields to help you understand what each field is for. So this is a summary that people will see before reading it, more or less. And then this is where the content goes. And I will say I enjoyed figuring out how to make this text area grow automatically, because in general when you have a text area, you have to like control the size and you can make it bigger or smaller, but I just had it where it automatically grows for the user as they're typing. And the structure of the post is supposed to kind of mimic the structure and how it looks in the pool to the reader. And then we put here our resources, and we would submit post. And then we can see that our post was submitted here in our drops. And we can check out the reviews for it, but there aren't any reviews for this drop because nobody's filtered it. But to show that when an approval occurs, once you meet 2 approvals, that something happens, we'll show you that this is another account with a different user. So this is the rsprog account. So this is the post by rsprog. And if we go into the filtration system, we can see that one of the posts to review is this overcoming procrastination post. Like that. In our database, it has 1 approval for a review, but there's no other reviews for it, so it hasn't met the threshold of 2 or more approvals. So we're just gonna go here and we're gonna check out this post, and so you're prompted as the reviewer to consider these things, like, are there grammatical errors, did it inform me, and then is the author credible, have I cited sources, and will it help and contribute to this community that wants to think critically and learn. For demonstration purposes, we're going to say that it did do all of these things. So we will approve it, and if we liked it, we could say, wow, this is great. And even though we liked it, we can leave feedback to say, I hope you explore this topic further in the future. And then that gives them something more to look towards. And then you submit that. And then you'll get a new post in your filtration system. Since you've already reviewed that post, you're not going to see it again to review it. And then now that it has been approved more than once, we have it right here. So we could check out the drop, and it's in the general pool of knowledge for everyone to see. And then we can just verify over here with the architect account that it is also, if we refresh the page, it is also here. And then in general, I had difficulties learning and adapting to Next.js as a framework because it was recommended we use Express and then just like React with Vite or a single page application. But in my research, I found that there's a trend with Next.js, and they're working closely with React to move towards server rendered components and server actions. So this like hides the API endpoints, which were traditionally used on the server, because you're gonna have everything all at once on the server, so it's like more protected. And basically with the server components, I'll fetch the data that I want to fill this page with on the server, and then I'll just create the page and send it to the client. You send the entire page. So it's different learning that new dynamic, because many of the resources online for Next.js use the old system of like API endpoints. So just trying to adapt to that was interesting. And then also creating the login form to provide feedback. So like we saw earlier, if we messed up like an error or something, I previously couldn't get it to display, and that's because with like server components and client components, they can't really be in the same file. Like you don't want a server action in a client component, which this is, because in client components you can manage states. Like this form has a state to display a message if an error occurs. But figuring out that dynamic was difficult. And another issue, well, I guess not an issue, but I want to improve on this further. And by doing that, I think I've learned a lot from this project, but for example, Vercel, which is like host Next.js applications, I use a MySQL database, and I think I'll have to transfer to Postgres because they would manage the database and host the website all in one for me, so I don't have to find a new database provider. It's all just integrated into their development framework. And authentication. So I essentially created the entire authentication system from scratch. So we can see like some of the code here with the session thing. We basically create a session, and then we have to have these session cookies and decrypt it and encrypt it when it's created, which is fairly complicated. So I think I should migrate to OAuth 2.0, I believe, and that would make it easier and likely more secure. But this did help as a learning moment because I had to understand sort of like every single part of the process. But obviously, as one developer doing this entire project, the front end, the design work, and the development for the back end too, and creating the database, it was a lot. So just abstracting away certain ideas that have already been done successfully, like authentication, is useful, I think, to improve my workflow in the future. So yeah, that's it. Thank you very much.